The alarm didn't go off. Of course it didn't. Rachel stared at her phone screen in horror as the time glared back at her. 6:45 in the morning, and she was supposed to be walking into her new job at 7:30. Her first day, her chance to finally turn things around for her and the kids. She jumped out of bed so fast she nearly tripped over the pile of clothes she'd carefully laid out the night before. Professional, put together, that's what she needed to look like today. Not like someone who'd been awake until midnight helping her daughter with a school project, while simultaneously trying to get her son to stop coughing long enough to fall asleep. 20 minutes later, Rachel was as ready as she was going to be. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her one good blazer was mostly wrinkle-free, and she'd managed to find both shoes that matched. Small victories. She kissed her sleeping kids goodbye, whispered instructions to Mrs. Chen from next door who'd agreed to watch them before school, and practically ran down the 3 flights of stairs from her apartment. Her phone buzzed. The Uber app showed her ride was still 8 minutes away. 8 minutes she absolutely did not have. Rachel felt her chest tighten with that familiar anxiety. This job was everything. Health insurance for the kids. A steady paycheck. A chance to stop living paycheck to paycheck and maybe, just maybe, save enough to move somewhere with a better school district. She paced on the sidewalk, checking her phone every few seconds like it would make the car arrive faster. Then she saw it. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up right in front of her building. Luxury cars weren't exactly common in her neighborhood, and she assumed it had to be her ride. The driver must have upgraded his vehicle. She'd heard some Uber drivers did that. Without thinking twice, Rachel yanked open the back door and slid in, her words tumbling out in a rushed apology. "I'm so sorry I'm running late. I know you've been waiting. Can we please hurry? I have to get to the Henderson building downtown, and I'm supposed to start at 7:30, and I really can't be late on my first day." The man in the driver's seat turned slightly, and Rachel got her first real look at him. He was younger than she expected, maybe late 30s, with dark hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners like he smiled a lot. He was wearing a navy blue sweater that looked expensive, and jeans that probably cost more than her entire month's grocery budget. For an Uber driver, he was dressed pretty well, but hey, she wasn't going to judge. Maybe he had another job after this. "Rough morning?" he asked, and his voice was warm, genuinely concerned, not the polite but distant tone most drivers used. "You have no idea." Rachel let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "My alarm didn't go off. My son was up half the night with his asthma acting up, and I'm about to walk into a job I desperately need and make a terrible first impression by being late." He pulled smoothly into traffic, and Rachel noticed he drove well, confident but not aggressive. "First day nerves? Is it that obvious?" She laughed, but it came out shaky. "I haven't had a new job in 5 years. My last company downsized, and I've been scraping by with temp work for 8 months. This position, it's like winning the lottery. Good salary, benefits, and they actually said they promote from within. My daughter needs braces. My son needs better asthma medication than what the free clinic can give him. And I just need to not mess this up." She realized she was rambling to a complete stranger, but something about him felt safe. Maybe it was the stress, or maybe it was just that he was asking like he actually cared about the answer. "What kind of work will you be doing?" He merged onto the highway, taking a route she wouldn't have thought of, but that was clearly faster. "Operations coordinator for a tech company. Henderson Tech Solutions. I'll be honest, I don't know much about tech, but I'm good at organizing things, solving problems, keeping projects on track. I used to manage a pharmacy, so I know how to deal with complicated systems and demanding people." "That's impressive," he said, and he sounded like he meant it. "Those skills transfer well. Tech companies need people who can actually communicate and organize, not just code." Rachel felt herself relaxing slightly. "I hope so. I've never even met my boss. The CEO is supposed to be this young genius who built the company from nothing. Kind of intimidating. I'm just hoping to stay out of his way and do good work, you know." "What do you know about him?" The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror, that slight smile still on his face. "Not much. The internet says he's private. Doesn't do interviews, rarely shows up in company photos. Made his first million before he was 30. Must be nice." She didn't say it with bitterness, just as a fact. Some people got lucky. Most people like her had to fight for every inch. "Maybe he worked hard for it," the driver suggested gently. "Oh, I'm sure he did. I didn't mean it like that. It's just when you're struggling to figure out how to afford your kid's inhaler, it's hard to imagine having that kind of success. Different worlds, you know? They drove in comfortable silence for a moment. The morning sun was starting to break through the buildings, painting everything in golden light. It would have been beautiful if Rachel wasn't calculating how many minutes until 7:30. "So what's your big dream?" he asked suddenly. "Beyond this job. If everything goes perfectly, where do you see yourself?" No one had asked her that in years. Rachel thought about it. "Project manager. Maybe in a few years if I prove myself. I like leading teams, figuring out how all the pieces fit together. And honestly, the money would be enough to move my kids somewhere better, somewhere they don't hear sirens every night, somewhere with a yard maybe." "That's a good dream," he said quietly. "Specific, achievable. What about you?" Rachel asked, realizing she'd been talking about herself the entire ride. "Do you like driving for Uber?" He seemed amused by the question. "I like meeting interesting people, hearing their stories. You'd be surprised what you learn when people feel comfortable enough to be real with you." "I guess I just unloaded my whole life story on you," Rachel said, feeling her cheeks warm with embarrassment. "Sorry about that. Don't be. It's refreshing, actually. Most people just stare at their phones. They were getting close now. Rachel could see the Henderson building ahead, all glass and steel and modern architecture. It looked expensive, intimidating, like the kind of place where she didn't quite belong, but she was going to fake it until she made it. For her kids, for herself. The driver pulled up smoothly to the front entrance. Rachel checked her phone. 7:28. She'd made it with 2 minutes to spare. She fumbled in her purse looking for her wallet. The ride should have charged to her card through the app, but she wanted to leave a tip. All she found was 3 crumpled dollar bills. Embarrassment flooded through her. After that whole speech about needing money, here she was with basically nothing to offer. "I'm so sorry," she said, holding out the bills. "This is all I have in cash right now. You were so kind and you got me here on time, and I wish I could give you more." He waved it off, that same warm smile on his face. "Keep it. Buy your kids something nice." "Are you sure?" "I feel terrible." "I'm sure." He turned in his seat to look at her directly. "Good luck today, Rachel. I have a feeling you're going to do great things here. Don't sell yourself short." Rachel felt unexpected tears prick at her eyes. When was the last time someone had believed in her like that? A stranger, no less. "Thank you, really. This was the best Uber ride I've ever had." She climbed out of the car, straightened her blazer, and took a deep breath. Through the glass doors, she could see a modern lobby with artistic lighting and comfortable furniture. This was it, her fresh start. As she walked toward the entrance, she turned back to wave at the kind driver one more time. He was still there watching her with that gentle smile, and he raised his hand in farewell. Rachel had no idea that in about 30 minutes, her entire world was about to turn upside down. That kind Uber driver wasn't a driver at all. And the understanding, warm conversation they'd just shared was going to make her first day at work either the best or most mortifying experience of her life. She pushed through the glass doors, ready to meet her future, completely unaware that she'd just spent 15 minutes pouring her heart out to the Millionaire CEO she'd been so nervous to impress. The lobby was even more impressive up close. Rachel's shoes clicked on the marble floor as she followed the signs to the elevators. Everything was spotless, modern, and expensive looking. She felt like an imposter, but she kept her chin up and walked like she belonged there. "Fake it until you make it," she reminded herself. The elevator took her to the 5th floor, where a friendly receptionist directed her to the conference room at the end of the hall. Rachel could hear voices inside, laughter, the buzz of conversation. She checked her reflection one more time in the glass wall, smoothed down her hair, and walked in. About 15 other people were already there, all new hires like her, chatting nervously over coffee and pastries laid out on a side table. Rachel recognized the energy immediately. Everyone trying to make a good impression, to appear confident while secretly wondering if they were good enough to be here. A woman in her 50s with perfectly styled gray hair and a sharp burgundy suit approached Rachel with a warm smile. "You must be Rachel Coleman. I'm Patricia, head of human resources. Welcome to Henderson Tech." "Thank you so much for this opportunity," Rachel said, shaking her hand. "I'm excited to be here. We're thrilled to have you. Your interview was impressive. That problem-solving exercise you did? The CEO specifically mentioned it when we were reviewing candidates. Patricia gestured to a seat near the front. "Why don't you grab some coffee and we'll get started in just a few minutes?" The CEO had noticed her interview. Rachel felt a flutter of pride mixed with anxiety. She poured herself coffee she didn't need, her hands still shaky from the rushed morning, and found a seat next to a young guy who introduced himself as a new software developer. Patricia called the meeting to order, welcoming everyone and walking them through the basics: company history, benefits overview, workplace culture. Rachel tried to focus, but her mind kept drifting to her kids. She'd have to remember to text Mrs. Chen during lunch, make sure everything was okay, make sure her son had his inhaler for school. "Now," Patricia said, and her voice took on an excited tone. "We have a special treat for you all today. Our CEO doesn't usually attend new hire orientations. He's quite private and his schedule is incredibly demanding, but he wanted to personally welcome this group. He believes that every person in this company matters, from interns to executives, and he tries to meet as many team members as he can." Rachel sat up straighter. She was going to meet the mysterious CEO, the genius millionaire who'd built this empire. She pictured someone older, maybe stern and serious, probably too busy to really notice any of them individually. "Please welcome the founder and CEO of Henderson Tech Solutions, Daniel Mitchell." The door opened and Rachel's entire world stopped. It was him, the Uber driver, walking into the conference room in that same navy sweater and jeans, looking completely comfortable and confident. That same kind smile on his face as he greeted Patricia and turned to face the room full of new employees. Rachel felt like she couldn't breathe. Her face burned hot with embarrassment. Oh God, oh no, she'd just spent 15 minutes telling the CEO her entire life story, complaining about money, treating him like a driver. She'd offered him $3. Daniel Mitchell started speaking, his voice carrying easily across the room. That same warm voice from the car. "Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Henderson Tech. I'm not much for formal speeches, so I'll keep this brief. I started this company 7 years ago in my garage because I believe that technology should solve real problems for real people, not just make rich people richer, but actually improve lives." Rachel tried to focus on his words, but her mind was spinning. He'd known. The whole time he'd known who he was, and he'd let her talk and talk and talk. She wanted to sink through the floor. "We're not a typical tech company," Daniel continued. "We don't have ping pong tables or free beer on tap. What we do have is a commitment to treating people like people. You all have lives outside these walls, families, responsibilities, dreams. We don't expect you to sacrifice everything for your job. We expect you to do excellent work during work hours, and then go home to the people and things that matter." His eyes swept across the room as he spoke, and Rachel tried to make herself smaller in her chair. "Don't look at me, don't look at me, don't look at me. I'm looking forward to getting to know each of you," Daniel said, and his gaze landed directly on Rachel. There it was again, that slight smile. "Some of you might be surprised by how hands-on I like to be. I believe in understanding every part of this company, from the code our developers write to the problems our operations team solves. So don't be shocked if you see me around. I'm not big on the corner office, isolated CEO thing." The speech wrapped up with some details about the company's upcoming projects and his vision for growth. Everyone applauded. Rachel clapped numbly, still trying to process what was happening. Patricia took over again, going through more orientation materials, but Rachel couldn't concentrate. Her mind was replaying every single thing she'd said in that car, every personal detail, every vulnerability she'd shared with a stranger who turned out to be the one person she most needed to impress. After the formal presentation ended, Patricia encouraged everyone to mingle, to introduce themselves to each other and to Daniel if they wanted. Most people hung back, intimidated. A few brave souls approached the CEO with prepared questions and professional smiles. Rachel stayed frozen in her seat, hoping she could somehow slip out unnoticed. She'd go to her assigned desk, start her actual work, and maybe, if she was lucky, Daniel Mitchell would forget she existed. "Rachel?" She looked up. Daniel was standing right in front of her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered her one. "You looked like you could use a refill." "Mr. Mitchell, I'm so sorry." The words tumbled out in a rush. "I had no idea. I thought you were my Uber driver and I just talked your ear off about my whole life and I offered you $3 and, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I completely understand if you want to reconsider my hiring. I promise I'm not usually that unprofessional." He sat down in the chair next to her, completely relaxed. Why would I reconsider hiring you? Because I treated you like a driver and complained about money and basically word vomited my entire personal situation onto you? You treated me like a human being, Daniel said simply. You were honest, real. Do you know how rare that is in my world? He took a sip of his coffee. The moment most people find out who I am, they change. They get nervous, they watch what they say. They try to figure out what I want to hear instead of just being themselves. That conversation we had? That was the most genuine interaction I've had in months. Rachel stared at him. You're not angry. Why would I be angry? You gave me insight into exactly the kind of employee we want here. Someone smart, hardworking, dedicated to their family, willing to be vulnerable and focused on building a better life. That's valuable, he smiled. Plus, your directions were good. Made it here with time to spare. Despite everything, Rachel felt a laugh bubble up. I still can't believe I mistook the CEO for my Uber driver. My car was pulling up right when you came out. I saw you checking your phone frantically, and when you jumped in, I was curious what would happen if I didn't correct you. Call it a character test. He looked at her seriously. You passed, by the way. With flying colors. So this was some kind of experiment? Not intentionally. But I learned more about you in that 15-minute drive than I would have in a dozen formal meetings. Daniel set down his coffee cup. You talked about wanting to be a project manager. About your skills in organizing complex systems and managing difficult situations. You want to know what I see? Someone who's already leading. Even if it's not in an official capacity. You're managing your family's healthcare, your finances, your kids' education, all while working and staying positive. That's leadership. Rachel felt her throat tighten with emotion. Thank you. That means a lot. I want to make you a promise, and I need you to take me seriously. Daniel's tone shifted, became more formal. I will never use anything you told me in that car against you. Not your financial situation, not your son's health issues, nothing. That conversation was between two people, not between a CEO and an employee. Your privacy matters to me. And if you ever feel like I'm crossing a line or using information inappropriately, you come directly to me. Understood? Understood, Rachel said quietly. And for what it's worth, I won't tell anyone about this morning. I know you value your privacy. I appreciate that. Though honestly, if you want to tell the story about mistaking the CEO for an Uber driver, go ahead. It's pretty funny. Daniel stood up and Rachel realized other people were starting to look their way, curious about why the CEO was spending so much time talking to one new hire. Let's keep this between us for now, though. Fresh start. You're here because you earned it, not because of a chance encounter. Absolutely. Fresh start. Good. Now go meet your team and start doing great work. I meant what I said in that car. I have a feeling you're going to do great things here, Rachel. He walked away to talk to other new hires, leaving Rachel sitting there with her coffee, her mind still spinning but her anxiety starting to ease. This was the strangest first day she could have imagined, but maybe, just maybe, it was also the beginning of something good. She spent the rest of the orientation meeting her new colleagues, learning about her role and getting her workspace set up. Every now and then, she'd catch Daniel across the room, talking to someone or reviewing something with Patricia, and their eyes would meet briefly. He'd give her that small smile, and she'd feel a little less like an imposter. By the end of the day, Rachel was exhausted but optimistic. She'd survived the most mortifying start possible, and somehow come out the other side without getting fired. Her new manager seemed supportive, her teammates were friendly, and the work itself looked challenging but manageable. As she packed up to leave, she checked her phone. Mrs. Chen had sent updates throughout the day. Both kids were fine, homework was done, dinner was handled. Everything was okay. Rachel took the bus home, too tired to spring for another Uber. As the city passed by outside the window, she thought about Daniel Mitchell. About how he'd treated her with kindness when he could have been offended or dismissive. About how he'd seen potential in her when she barely saw it in herself. She didn't know it yet, but that morning's mistaken identity was just the beginning. Daniel Mitchell had seen something in Rachel during that car ride. Something that reminded him of why he'd started this company in the first place, and over the coming weeks he was going to make sure she had every opportunity to show the whole company what he'd already seen. Sometimes, the most embarrassing moments lead to the most interesting opportunities. Rachel was about to discover just how true that was. 6 weeks passed in a blur of learning, adapting, and proving herself. Rachel threw herself into the work like her life depended on it, because in many ways it did. Every day she showed up early and stayed late, not to show off, but because she genuinely wanted to understand every aspect of her role. She took notes, asked questions, and volunteered for projects that other people avoided because they were tedious or complicated. Her manager, Linda, was impressed. During their first month review, she'd told Rachel that she was exceeding expectations. The feedback felt good, really good, after so many months of just barely scraping by. For the first time in years, Rachel felt like she was building something instead of just surviving. What Rachel didn't realize was that Daniel was keeping track. Not in a creepy way, but in the way a CEO who genuinely cares about his company watches new talent develop. He'd ask Linda about Rachel's progress during their weekly meetings. He'd glance at the project reports that crossed his desk and notice Rachel's name appearing more and more often. The feedback was consistently positive, detail-oriented, excellent problem solver, great with clients, team player. It was a Thursday evening, almost 7 o'clock, when Daniel decided to walk through the office. Most people had gone home already. The sun was setting outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the open workspace in orange and gold light. He liked the office at this hour, quiet, peaceful. A chance to think without constant meetings and interruptions. He was surprised to see someone still at their desk in the operations section. Rachel, her face illuminated by her computer screen, completely focused on whatever she was working on. Her blazer was draped over her chair, her hair had fallen loose from its ponytail, and she was typing quickly while referencing what looked like spreadsheets on a second monitor. Daniel approached quietly, not wanting to startle her. "Burning the midnight oil?" Rachel jumped slightly, then turned. When she saw it was him, she smiled. They'd had a few brief interactions over the past weeks, always professional, always friendly. The awkwardness of that first day had faded into a comfortable mutual respect. "Oh, hi. Not quite midnight yet, but getting there. What are you working on that's keeping you here so late?" "The quarterly operations report for Linda. It's due tomorrow morning, and I want to make sure it's perfect. I'm also trying to redesign how we present the data. The current format is functional but not very intuitive. I think if we reorganize it, it'll be easier for the executives to spot trends and make decisions." She gestured to her screen. "Want to see?" Daniel pulled up a chair, genuinely interested. "Show me." Rachel walked him through her analysis. She'd taken dense, complicated data about project timelines, resource allocation, and client satisfaction, and transformed it into clear visual representations, color-coded charts that made patterns obvious, summary sections that highlighted key takeaways. It was smart work, the kind that showed she understood not just the data itself but how people actually used information to make decisions. "This is excellent," Daniel said, and he meant it. "How long have you been working on this?" "A couple weeks in between my regular tasks. I just kept thinking about how we could make things clearer, more useful. My old boss at the pharmacy used to say that information is only valuable if people can actually understand it. No point in gathering data if it just sits in a complicated spreadsheet nobody reads." Daniel leaned back, studying her. "You worked in a pharmacy before this?" "For 3 years. Not as a pharmacist, I don't have that degree. But I managed the front operations, handled scheduling, inventory, insurance claims, customer service. It was complicated work, honestly. People think it's just counting pills, but there's a lot of problem solving involved. Dealing with insurance companies, managing difficult patients, making sure everything follows regulations. And that's where you learn to organize complex systems." "Exactly. Healthcare is a mess of overlapping systems that barely talk to each other. You have to be able to see the big picture while managing a million tiny details. I figured those skills would transfer to tech." Rachel paused, looking a bit self-conscious. "Sorry, I'm rambling again. Seems to be a habit around you," Daniel smiled. "Don't apologize, I asked. And I'm asking something else now, something a bit unexpected. Do you have a few minutes? There's something I want to discuss with you, and it can't wait until tomorrow." Rachel glanced at her computer, then nodded. "Of course." They walked to Daniel's office, which was surprisingly modest for a CEO. No massive desk or intimidating leather chairs. Just a regular office with some nice furniture, whiteboards covered in notes and diagrams, and family photos on the credenza. Rachel noticed a picture of a woman who looked like an older version of Daniel, surrounded by kids in graduation gowns. "Your family?" Rachel asked. my mom and my younger siblings. That was taken at my brother's college graduation last year. Mom worked 3 jobs to put all 4 of us through school. Daniel's voice was soft with affection. She's the reason I built this company the way I did. I watched her sacrifice everything, and I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to create something, it would honor people like her. People who work hard and deserve to be treated with dignity. Rachel understood completely. That's beautiful. Daniel gestured for her to sit, then settled into his own chair. He got straight to the point. We're pitching for a major contract next month. Healthcare tech company. Big expansion opportunity. $15 million deal. It could really move the needle for us, open up a whole new market sector. That's amazing, Rachel said, not sure why he was telling her this. The pitch team has been working on it for 2 months, and they're stuck. Good people, smart people, but they're thinking like engineers, all features and technical specs. They're missing the human element, the actual user experience. I've been reviewing their presentations and something's not clicking. Daniel looked at her directly. I think you could help them. Your work on this operations report, your background in healthcare, your instinct for making complicated things understandable. That's what we need. Rachel's heart started beating faster. You want me on the pitch team? As a consultant, yes. It would mean extra work, longer hours for the next few weeks. It's above your current pay grade, and some people might question why I'm bringing in such a junior team member. He held up a hand before she could protest. But I've been doing this long enough to recognize talent when I see it. I think you have insights that could make the difference between winning and losing this contract. This was huge. The kind of opportunity people worked years to get. Rachel's mind immediately went to logistics. The longer hours would be difficult. I have my kids and childcare is complicated. My son has doctor's appointments twice a week for his asthma. I can't miss those. Instead of looking disappointed, Daniel nodded like he'd expected this. What if we made it work around your schedule? You leave at 5:30 on appointment days, no questions asked, and we'll arrange for a car service to take you to and from the doctor, so you don't lose work time in transit. You can work remotely on those afternoons if needed. Rachel stared at him. You'd do that? Rachel, I told you on your first day, we don't expect people to sacrifice their families for work. If you're good at your job, which you clearly are, then we make accommodations that let you be both a great employee and a great parent. Those things shouldn't be mutually exclusive. Daniel's expression was serious. I need you on this pitch team, but not at the cost of your son's health. We'll make it work. She felt tears prick at her eyes, but blinked them back. Okay, yes, I want to do this. Good. Team meeting tomorrow at 10. I'll brief them tonight that you're joining. Fair warning, some of them might be territorial at first. You're the new person, the outsider. Don't let it intimidate you. You have a perspective they lack, and that's valuable. Rachel left his office feeling like she was floating. This was her shot, her chance to show what she could really do, to move toward that project manager dream she'd mentioned in the car that first morning. Daniel hadn't forgotten. He'd been paying attention, looking for ways to help her grow. The next day's meeting was exactly what Daniel had predicted. The pitch team was made up of senior developers, the head of product design, and a marketing specialist. All of them had years more experience than Rachel. When she walked in, she could feel the skepticism rolling off them in waves. Linda, her manager, was there too, shooting Rachel an encouraging smile. Daniel stood at the head of the conference table, projecting the current pitch deck onto the screen. Everyone, this is Rachel Coleman from our operations team. She's joining us as a consultant on the healthcare user experience aspects of our pitch. Daniel's tone was matter of fact, brooking no argument. Rachel has direct experience with healthcare systems as both a professional and a patient advocate. That perspective is exactly what we've been missing. One of the senior developers, an older man named Greg, raised an eyebrow. No offense, but we've been working on this for 2 months. We're presenting to healthcare executives who understand the technical side. Not sure what operations can add at this stage. Before Daniel could respond, Rachel spoke up. Can I see the current pitch? They walked through it. Slide after slide of impressive technology, processing speeds, data security measures, integration capabilities. All important, all correct, but Rachel immediately saw the problem. It was a pitch to engineers, not to the executives who would make the final decision. This is really good work, Rachel said carefully. The technology is solid. But can I ask a question? Who are you actually presenting to? Who makes the final decision on contracts like this? The marketing specialist, a woman named Diane, answered. The C-suite. CEO, CFO, Chief Medical Officer. Right, and what are they worried about? Rachel looked around the table. They're worried about patient outcomes, about lawsuits, about staff adoption, about whether their doctors and nurses will actually use this system or hate it and find workarounds. They're worried about the headlines that'll get written if something goes wrong. She saw a few people starting to nod, their skepticism cracking. You're showing them what the system can do, Rachel continued, but you're not showing them what it means for their patients, for their staff, for their reputation. She turned to Daniel. May I? He gestured to the laptop. Please. Rachel pulled up her phone, quickly finding a photo she'd taken a few months ago at her son's doctor's office. This is what a patient sees when they check in at most hospitals. Multiple screens, confusing prompts, insurance cards that never scan right. My son is 7. He's scared of the doctor because of his asthma. And before he even sees a nurse, we have to navigate this mess while he's trying not to cry. The room was quiet. Now imagine a system that actually understood that experience. That made check-in simple. That automatically pulled up his records, that let the nurse see at a glance that he's scared and needs extra patience. That flagged that his inhaler prescription is running low before we even ask. That's not just good technology. That's good healthcare. And that's what you should be selling. Greg leaned forward, his skepticism replaced with interest. How would we demonstrate that in a pitch? Tell a story, Rachel said simply. Walk them through a patient journey with your current system versus with our solution. Show them the problems their staff faces every day and how we solve them. Make it about people, not processors. Daniel was watching her with something like pride. That's exactly what we need. Everyone, for the next 3 weeks, Rachel is a full member of this team. Her insight is going to be what wins us this contract. I suggest you listen to what she has to say. The meeting transformed after that. Ideas started flowing. Diane pulled out her laptop and began sketching new presentation concepts. Greg started talking about which features would actually address the pain points Rachel had mentioned. Even the skeptics were engaged, excited by this new direction. Over the following weeks, Rachel worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. She attended meetings, reviewed drafts, contributed ideas, and helped reshape the entire pitch around the human experience of healthcare. The team slowly came to respect her, especially after she spotted a potential compliance issue in their demo that could have been disastrous. Daniel checked in regularly, not micromanaging but making his support clear. When Rachel had to leave for her son's appointments, he never made her feel guilty. When she worked late, he often did too, and they'd sometimes end up in the break room at 8 p.m., grabbing coffee and debriefing about the day's progress. One evening, as they stood by the coffee maker, Daniel said quietly, "You're proving me right." "You know, about what?" "About seeing leadership in you. The team looks to you now. They trust your judgment. That doesn't happen by accident." Rachel felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you for this opportunity. For believing in me when you had no real reason to." "I had plenty of reasons. I just saw them before you did." Daniel smiled. "Now let's go win this pitch." 2 weeks before the big presentation, everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday morning, and Rachel was in the middle of a team meeting, reviewing the final slides one more time. Her phone buzzed on the table, then buzzed again, and again. She glanced down and saw Mrs. Chen's name flashing on the screen, along with 3 missed calls. Her stomach dropped. Mrs. Chen never called during work hours unless it was an emergency. Rachel's hands were already shaking as she excused herself from the meeting and stepped into the hallway. She answered the phone to find Mrs. Chen's panicked voice on the other end. "Rachel, it's Tommy. He couldn't breathe at school. They called an ambulance. I'm following them to County General now. They said to call you immediately." The world tilted. Tommy, her 7-year-old son with asthma, the kid who'd been doing so well lately with his treatments. Rachel's mind flashed to every worst-case scenario. Severe asthma attacks could be life-threatening. "Kids died from this. I'm coming now," Rachel managed to say, her voice barely steady. "I'll be there as fast as I can." She rushed back into the conference room, grabbed her bag, and tried to explain through the panic clawing at her throat. "I have to go. My son, hospital emergency. I'm sorry." The words came out choppy, disconnected. Linda immediately stood up. "Go, don't worry about anything here. Just take care of your boy." Rachel was already running for the elevator, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She kept thinking about Tommy's scared face when he couldn't breathe, how small and vulnerable he looked during attacks. She thought about the cost of an ambulance, the emergency room bill, whether her new insurance had kicked in yet or if this was going to wipe out her tiny savings. The elevator ride down felt like it took forever. She burst into the lobby, frantically pulling up a rideshare app on her phone. 15 minutes for the nearest driver. 15 minutes she didn't have. County General was 20 minutes away in good traffic. Tommy was there, probably terrified, definitely struggling to breathe. Rachel felt tears starting to blur her vision. She was trying to figure out if she should just run to the street and flag down a taxi, when she heard someone call her name. Daniel was striding across the lobby, car keys in his hand. "Rachel, I heard what happened. Come on, I'll drive you." She didn't question it, didn't argue. They ran to the parking garage together, and minutes later they were speeding through traffic in Daniel's car, that same black Mercedes from her first day. But this time nothing felt comfortable or safe. This time her child was in a hospital and she wasn't there. "He's going to be okay," Daniel said firmly, weaving through traffic with practiced ease. "County General has an excellent pediatric emergency department. They know how to handle asthma attacks." "You don't know that," Rachel said, her voice breaking. "You don't know if he's okay. You're right, I don't. But I know that you getting there safely is what matters, and panicking won't help him." Daniel's voice was calm but not dismissive. "Talk to me. Tell me about Tommy, it'll help." So Rachel talked, the words spilling out like a dam breaking. She told him about Tommy's diagnosis at age 3. About the nights she'd sat up watching him breathe, terrified. About learning to recognize the signs of an attack. About the expensive medications and specialist visits. About how he'd been doing so much better lately that she'd almost let herself believe the worst was behind them. "He's so brave," Rachel said through tears. "He never complains even when it's hard to breathe. He just looks at me with these big eyes like he trusts me to make it better. And I can't always make it better." Daniel reached over and squeezed her hand briefly before returning it to the wheel. "You're a good mom. The fact that you care this much, that you're this worried, that's what makes you a good mom." They made it to the hospital in 17 minutes. Daniel dropped Rachel at the emergency entrance and went to park. She ran inside, gave Tommy's name to the triage nurse, and was directed to a room in the pediatric section. When she burst through the curtain, Tommy was sitting up in bed with an oxygen mask over his small face. His eyes were wide and scared, but he was breathing. A nurse was adjusting an IV in his arm, while Mrs. Chen sat in a chair beside the bed, looking relieved to see Rachel. "Mama?" Tommy's voice was muffled by the mask, but Rachel heard the fear in it. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Rachel moved to the bed, took his hand, kissed his forehead. His skin was clammy, his little body exhausted from the struggle to breathe. But he was okay. He was breathing. The nurse explained that Tommy had experienced a severe asthma attack triggered by something in the school environment, possibly strong cleaning chemicals. They'd administered emergency medication, got his oxygen levels stabilized, and were now monitoring him. The doctor would be in soon, but the worst was over. Over the next hour, Rachel sat with Tommy, holding his hand, reading to him from a book Mrs. Chen had wisely thought to bring. The doctor came, examined Tommy, adjusted his medications, and said they wanted to keep him overnight for observation. His oxygen levels were improving, but they wanted to be cautious. Rachel thanked Mrs. Chen profusely, assured her she had things handled now, and sent her home. Then she called the school to get her daughter picked up and taken to a neighbor's house. Her carefully constructed childcare system was barely holding together. But it was working. It wasn't until things calmed down that Rachel remembered the pitch meeting, the work waiting for her, the whole project she'd just abandoned. She checked her phone and saw several texts from Linda saying not to worry, to focus on Tommy, to take whatever time she needed. There was also a text from Daniel. "In the waiting room if you need anything. Take your time." Rachel's throat tightened. He was still here. He'd driven her to the hospital and stayed. She texted back, "Thank you for staying. I'm okay now. You should go back to work. I know you're busy." His response came immediately. "Not going anywhere. Just let me know if you need coffee, food, or anything else." 2 hours later, when Tommy had finally dozed off, exhausted from the ordeal, Rachel stepped out into the hallway. Daniel was indeed in the waiting room, laptop open, apparently handling work from the uncomfortable plastic chairs. He looked up when he saw her. "How is he?" "Stable. They're keeping him overnight, but he's okay." Rachel felt the adrenaline crash hitting her, exhaustion settling into her bones. "You didn't have to stay." "I know I didn't have to." Daniel closed his laptop and stood up. "But I wanted to. Have you eaten anything today?" Rachel tried to remember. "I had coffee this morning." "That's what I thought. Come on." He guided her to the hospital cafeteria, bought them both sandwiches and real coffee, and found a quiet corner table. Rachel realized she was starving and ate half her sandwich before speaking again. "I'm sorry about the meeting, about running out like that." "Rachel, stop." Daniel's voice was firm. "Your son was in the hospital. That's not something you apologize for. But the pitch is in 2 weeks and I'm supposed to be presenting a whole section, and now I've lost a day of prep time and the world didn't end." The team adjusted. Linda took notes on what we still need to finalize. "We'll catch you up when you're ready." Daniel leaned forward. "Listen to me very carefully. Your kid comes first. Always. No job, no pitch, no contract is more important than that. If you'd stayed in that meeting while your son was in an ambulance, I would have been disappointed in you." Rachel felt tears threatening again, but these were different tears. Relief, gratitude. Most bosses don't think like that. Most bosses are idiots. Daniel smiled slightly. "I told you on your first day I built this company to honor people like my mom. She missed my 8th grade graduation because she had to work. She cried that night because she hated that she couldn't be there. I promised myself I'd never create a workplace that made parents choose like that." They sat in silence for a moment, the hospital sounds humming around them. The overhead pages for doctors, the beep of equipment, the shuffle of footsteps. "Can I tell you something?" Daniel said quietly. "Something I don't talk about much." Rachel nodded. "My mom is the strongest person I know. She immigrated here with nothing, raised 4 kids alone after my dad left, worked herself to exhaustion to give us opportunities. But the system wasn't designed for people like her. She had jobs that didn't offer sick days, bosses who threatened to fire her if she missed work for our school events. No health insurance for years." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I watched her sacrifice everything, and I watched it break her down piece by piece. By the time I made my first million, by the time I could finally help her, she'd developed chronic health problems from the stress and overwork." "I'm sorry," Rachel said softly. "That's why I do this. That's why I care about benefits and flexible schedules and treating people like humans, because I saw what happens when companies don't." He looked at Rachel directly. "You remind me of her. That same fierce determination to give your kids a better life. That same strength. And I'll be damned if I'm going to be another boss who makes that harder instead of easier." Rachel didn't know what to say to that. The moment felt too big, too honest. Here was this millionaire CEO, sitting in a hospital cafeteria at 3 in the afternoon, sharing his deepest motivations with an employee he'd only known for 2 months. "I have a doctor I want you to consider," Daniel said, shifting to practical matters. "My family's pediatric pulmonologist, best in the city. He specializes in childhood asthma. I'm going to have my assistant send you his information. He works with our company's insurance, so it's fully covered." "Daniel, that's too much. It's healthcare. It's literally what your insurance is for. Tommy deserves the best care available, and you deserve not to worry about whether you can afford it." He pulled out his phone. "I'm also going to arrange for a nurse to check on Tommy daily for the next week, just to make sure he's recovering well. Home visits, no additional cost. Why are you doing all this?" Daniel looked surprised by the question. "Because you're part of my team. Because I can. Because no parent should have to choose between their kid's health and their job security." He paused. "And because that conversation we had in the car that first morning. You weren't just talking to an Uber driver. You were showing me who you really are. Someone who fights for her family, who doesn't give up, who keeps pushing forward no matter how hard it gets. That's the kind of person I want in this company. That's the kind of person I want to support." Rachel felt something shift in that moment. She'd been thinking of Daniel as her boss, as the CEO, as someone fundamentally different from her. But sitting here, seeing his genuine concern, hearing his story, she realized he understood her life in a way most people in his position never would. He'd lived it through his mother. He got it. "Thank you," she said, and the words felt inadequate for everything he was doing. "Really, thank you." They went back upstairs together. Daniel stopped at the waiting room while Rachel returned to Tommy's room. Her son was awake now, looking much better. The color had returned to his cheeks and his breathing was steady without the oxygen mask. "Hey, buddy," Rachel said, settling into the chair beside his bed. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," Tommy said. "But better. The doctor said I was really brave." "You were incredibly brave." Rachel brushed his hair back from his forehead. "I'm so proud of you." "Mama, who was that man?" "The one who came with you." Rachel smiled. "That's my boss, Daniel. He drove me here when I got the call about you. He seems nice. He told me I could visit his office sometime and see where you work." "He did?" Rachel felt warmth spread through her chest. Daniel had come in while she was getting food. He'd talked to Tommy, tried to make him feel better. "Yeah. He said you're really good at your job. He said I should be proud of you." Tommy's eyes were starting to close again, exhaustion pulling him back toward sleep. "I am proud of you, Mama." Rachel stayed with Tommy through the night, dozing in the uncomfortable hospital chair, jerking awake every time a nurse came in to check vitals. In the morning, the doctor cleared Tommy for discharge with a new action plan for his asthma management and prescriptions for improved medications. As Rachel was gathering their things, her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "How's he doing?" "Much better. Being discharged this morning?" "Good. Car service is waiting downstairs to take you both home. Driver's name is Robert. Take the rest of the week off. See you Monday." Rachel stared at the phone. He'd arranged a car service. He was giving her the rest of the week off, fully paid, she assumed. This level of care and support was beyond anything she'd experienced in her entire working life. She thought about what he'd said the night before. About his mother. About building a company that honored people like her. He wasn't just talking. He was living it. And somewhere in the back of her mind, beneath the exhaustion and gratitude, Rachel realized something else. She wasn't just grateful to her boss. She was starting to care about Daniel Mitchell as a person, starting to see him not as the CEO on the 5th floor, but as someone who understood her, who saw her, who made her feel valued in a way that went beyond professional respect. It was a dangerous realization, complicated, inappropriate, probably. But sitting there in that hospital room with her sleeping son, remembering the genuine concern in Daniel's eyes, Rachel couldn't quite bring herself to push the feeling away. The day of the pitch arrived with perfect autumn weather. Clear skies, cool air, the kind of morning that felt full of possibility. Rachel stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her blazer for the 3rd time. She'd bought it with her first real paycheck from Henderson Tech, a small celebration of how far she'd come in just 3 months. Tommy was back to normal, his asthma under control with the better medications Daniel's specialist had prescribed. Her daughter had aced her math test. Mrs. Chen was watching the kids with her usual reliable kindness. Everything was falling into place, but Rachel still felt butterflies dancing in her stomach. Today wasn't just about the pitch. Today was about proving to herself that she belonged in this world, that she could stand in front of executives from a major healthcare company and show them something worth $15 million of their trust.